Here we go. Hey everyone, this is Phil Christman. He is a lecturer at the University of Michigan, and this is his we're talking about his second collection of essays, second book. This one is a collection of essays. Was Midwestern Futures, is that, what would you call that? Is that also a collection of essays?
Midwest Futures is kind of one long essay. It's divided into 36 parts, but it's a sustained thing. Yeah.
I realized, so this collection, How to Be Normal, I came in contact with about a month or so ago when I read an article and really fell in love with how you spoke about how love is sort of transformed over time. And so I had to get the book, and I feel really unbelievably lucky that you agreed to talk to me about life and your practice, and also how to be normal. I didn't ask you on the Instagram Live, how do you define normal? Or can you talk a little bit about the title? Because it's got a lot of different, it's got a certain amount of irony to it that I think would be exciting for you to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where the essays had a shared theme that I didn't realize as I was writing them. You know, it kind of started with my friend Barbara McClay, who a wonderful writer, and she used to edit me at the Hedgehog Review. She asked me to write about the Midwest, which led to that book. And a lot of what I was doing in the Midwest was talking about like the idea that the Midwest is boring and all the ways in which that turns out to be obviously false. And then she asked me to write about masculinity. I didn't actually want to write about that topic because I was like, that sounds boring. That sounds like it could get really navel-gazy. And she kind of pushed me about it. And so by the time the masculinity essay was done, she was like, you have 2/3 of a Being Normal trilogy. And I was like, oh God, that's right. And then it was my best friend, Adam Petty, who's also a writer I really admire, who gave me the title for the book. But then, you know, looking back, I realized, you know, and we talked about this in the Instagram Live, that a lot of my life has been about trying to learn how to push past boredom and not forget about how interesting and beautiful other people and things are, not let like the habit of encountering people every day like dull me to their possibilities. So I mean, it kind of fits. And as for normal, I don't know if I have it. I don't know if I have a definition of it. I should probably work on that before I go out on the book tour for this thing. But like, one of the things that comes up again and again in the essays is that I feel like normal almost becomes this cloak that strange and interesting things get hidden under. It's almost like a strategy for dulling our own perceptions rather than a thing in itself. It's just, we put that label on things and then we don't look at them anymore.
So there's another point of irony there, in the sense that you're deeply looking in this book, if I understood what you just said.
Yeah, I'm peeling away the sense that something is normal so that I can look at it again.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of your hesitancy to write about masculinity? Because I do think that was an interesting, for me, reading, it was hard to sort of pinpoint. There were lots of different data points in that essay that I couldn't, it was more of a reflection on the ambiguity of what it means to be masculine at this moment.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Why was I hesitant? I mean, one, I'm afraid of writing essays that are just kind of navel gazing in a boring way, which is why I always come at these topics. Like I do a ton of research and then try to see where I have experiences that help me discern what sense to make of the research. I think that was a lot of it. I was afraid that it would just turn into like a collection of anecdotes about, you know, times when I felt dumb for not knowing how to fix a car, or times when I got punched and, lost a fight in the playground or whatever. And I think once I was able to realize how ambiguous and almost kind of empty the concept is, that made it easier. And as far as like the through line of the essay, I mean, I was actually thinking about this yesterday, like what does that essay really boil down to? On the one hand, I am trying to say to one kind of social media speech that kind of almost takes men as so banal, that we're barely there. We're just kind of bags of mediocrity. No, we're people. And more importantly, I'm also trying to say that which sounds like a critique of feminism, which no, it's a critique of one tiny strand of feminism. But I'm also trying to say much more loudly to anyone who is coming at the topic from a more right-wing orientation, where it's like, well, the job of the man is to protect women and to be tough and stoic, and like Gary Cooper. I'm trying to make it very clear to them that there's a lot of empirical data showing that married women are working themselves to death. And it's not tough to let that happen. Do some dishes. Like, if you want to protect people, do some dishes, change a diaper, so those are kind of the two things that if you get nothing else, like that, that I'm content with that.
I think that it's sort of, I mean, it's always, for me, interesting to hear different perspectives and sort of broadening the spectrum of what it means to be masculine or exhibit those traits, and how I can't help as a person understand things through stereotypes or through terms, but then once you break them down, the whole hollowness of the whole thing sort of is both disorienting and interesting at the same time. Can you talk a little bit? I realized I didn't ask you before about how to be religious. This is one of the essays that I didn't get through because I didn't have enough time, but it's a topic that I'm really curious about.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything I write ends up having some Christian subtext to it, because that's just like who I am and how I view the world. And I think being a Christian is a good preparation for writing, because they're both things that they're basically, if you take them seriously, they're impossible vocations that you're only ever going to fail.
How so?
Well, I'll never write a book that is as good as the book that I'm imagining when I write page one of a book, right? I mean, you're always, no matter how close you get to your ideal, you're never quite attaining it. And as for being a Christian, I mean, I do not yet 24/7 love my neighbor as myself, like, working on it. But, and so, and they're both things that it's easy to be pretentious and pat yourself on the back about. And they're like there's a constant temptation to being prideful about these things, and to treat them as an identity rather than as something that you've earned, rather than as something that you're kind of humbly seeking after. So I guess they feel structurally similar to me. I wrote that essay for Brandy Jensen at the Outline before the Outline shut down, and she was looking for like commonplace ideas that just drive you nuts, like things everybody assumes are true that are like, no, that's not true. And for me, like, that was really easy to identify, because people talk about religion as a source of it's a source of certainty. People will say to me, like, I wish I had your certainty. And I'm like, what certainty? Like, I do not feel any certainty at all that I'm after I die, I'm not going to just rot. Like, it's a hope that I have. It is not a certainty. And so I really wanted to push back against that because it had been driving me, it had been really getting on my nerves for a long time, actually. It's because it's a real journalistic commonplace. So
well, I think that I definitely would, just from hearing you speak, fall into that other group of envying a certain amount of certainty that I perceive people with sort of a strong faith tradition to have. And for a long time, I thought, oh, am I, because I was raised Unitarian, that I kept thinking, oh, what would it be like to have certainty? And oh, now that I have a daughter, what would it be like? Should I choose a faith tradition so that she could have that certainty? And it's interesting to hear you speak about it, that the certainty, it's sort of an illusion that I should have seemed obvious to me. That
I don't think it should seem obvious. I mean, I had to write a whole essay. I mean, it's such an easy way to see things that I had to write a whole essay about it. Like lots of very intelligent people do see it that way. And I think a lot of religious people present it that way too. And maybe some experience it that way. So I don't think you're like wrong or bad for perceiving it that way, but I do think it's a little bit of an optical illusion. It does give me structure.
Can you check, or what do you mean by that?
I mean, it rules out certain options for me, like spending all my money on myself, which I could so easily do. I love acquiring books. I'm so acquisitive. And I'm
so basically being a Christian stops you from buying more books.
Being a Christian stops me from it makes me remember that the person who is like is sending out a GoFundMe because they're about to lose their house. That could, not only could that be me, that could be Christ. And if I'm about to I don't know if I'm about to drop.
I knew that the books was buying more books was.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have my father's sense of humor, which no one gets unless you're my father or me. And so sorry.
Shout out to Chris's dad.
Making a silly joke, but I think I think as a person who I think it depends on how you defined agnostic or atheist. I think that sort of I am envious of the sort of like values and perspectives that religion can offer. I think we're basically, I know that, I don't know if this is something that one could say was basic. I'm left to sort of define the values that I find important, and discovering what those are can be a lot of work, I think. Not that within the Christian doctrine that isn't also a responsibility.
Yeah, any religion that is like older than a couple of weeks, the tradition is bigger and is big enough that you're kind of still doing that work. You're just doing it within you're picking and choosing within this,
I also have to say, there's something really brave about writing about the topics that you write about in this book. And I know I sort of like briefly asked you about like, why were you scared to write about masculinity? But I guess that was sort of like a trap question in some ways. Like you throughout the book are trying to sort of tackle these topics that we just don't talk about because I don't know, for me, I'm afraid of maybe saying something wrong or offending someone. And that for me, a core value is I really don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. Sometimes I probably do it a lot, but it's antithetical to my intention.
Yeah.
But you do it in such a sort of like, it seems very open and exploratory, and like you're actually trying to get at the root of something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I found that I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I think.
Oh, no, I interrupted you. No, go for it.
Well, I think that I think when I started writing these essays, I was worried. I don't think I was always worried about like offending somebody, having people mad at me, social media backlash, getting canceled. Although there were a couple where that came up a little bit, but I was just worried about being cringe or writing something that sucked. But I think the obviously exploratory nature of the essays has kept people who might be made uncomfortable by the topic from going after me, or from feeling affronted by it, from feeling offended by it. Like I
also think sorry, now I'm interrupting you. You
okay.
take the critical lens that you are looking at these topics through equally pointing it towards yourself. And there's a way that sort of understanding that this might be just part of how you operate.
Very much so.
There's a humility to that going all the way back to Midwestern culture, I feel like is something that's very deeply ingrained in.
Yeah, well, thank you. A lot of the writers that I respect the most, they do. You have to maintain some amount of humility, or else the world stops being interesting to you, and then you stop having new stuff to say. So for me, like it's not just a moral value that I try to live up to. It's also like it's part of the job description. Yeah.
When you this is like pretty tangential, but when you're teaching something that I'm assuming you like doing,
I love it.
how do you inspire, or like what do you find, how do you inspire people to keep going, or to write more? Or
well, that's another place where the curiosity and the not projecting a stereotype onto a student, not thinking who they are and what they're capable of too early, which I have to continually, like, that's a process. I have to continually push back on myself. I think a student is behaving in a way that scans as lazy, and then I go, what else could that be? Do I know what stressors is this student under? Is this student threatened by the subject matter? There's a million things that could be. So like trying to continually keep my picture of who my students are a little bit in the air, and then that allows me to stay curious about them, and then that allows me to see what they're already doing right, even if it's something very small, and then make them aware of that, and that does inspire people. And I think especially U of M, everybody is trying to climb the late capitalist treadmill, and students are harshly judgmental of themselves in a really horrible way. So the fact that I don't immediately come in like you're an idiot and your work sucks, that seems to kind of surprise and disarm and empower them. So yeah, those things they really work for me.
one of the first times I knew I never wanted to teach. Well, I mean, yeah, but I'm also not good. I find it's really, really exhausting to retrain my brain to only notice the positive, or to try to notice the positive. Because I mean, I believe in positive reinforcement being more effective. And I also think that it like spreads the sort of energy that I'm interested in. Not that I'm not critical. Well, maybe I don't know, who knows. But
yeah.
But it takes a lot of it takes a lot of effort, and it also sort of like fights against this sort of impulse to just be like, don't do that, that sucks. But really sort of explore a little bit more. Sorry, do you have kids?
I have one kid from a previous relationship who was raised by kindly Canadian sheep farmers. I'm sorry that there isn't a shorter way of saying all that. Now she's now they're in their early 20s, and we talk on text all the time. We're pretty good.
I'm new to this like positive reinforcement parenting, or positive discipline, trying to retrain my neural pathways to have it seem authentic and
Yeah. To not just be like, don't do that, don't do that.
yeah.
That's the kind of
Okay.
parent I would have been too.
What do you, okay, so this could tie back to what you just said, because I feel like there's a lot to sort of potentially dig in there. And then also I really wanted to ask you about what it was like to be in a relationship with a writer and have a book come out the same year as your partner, but we only have 6 more minutes. And I wanted to ask you to share your secret, if you would be so kind. If you came
Well,
up
okay.
with one.
One thing is, I'm not a very good musician. I have bad rhythm, but I have perfect pitch. Like if I hear like a machine humming in the background, like I just automatically catalog what note it is. I can, if it's not super complex, I can play anything that I hear. It will sound like garbage, but I can play it.
Wait, so there's something like lost in translation from like you perceive it in its correct form, but then it like comes through you in a, and something.
Usually it's the rhythm, or I can't figure out a way to make it sound good on a piano. I mean, you can't, that's a specialized skill that I don't have, taking something that's like a symphony and, figuring out how to reproduce all those parts. That's kind of what I mean when I say I can't make it sound right. But
so what can we extrapolate from this? Like you're a secret musician, or you have this, what is this talent? What do you use this talent? Or is this more like a hidden talent that like one wouldn't necessarily by looking at you know that you are cataloging and deciphering all noises going on?
Yeah, right. It's a secret talent in that, like, a lot of the time I forget that I have it. But I think it's also true. A lot of writers are like frustrated rock stars. So yeah, I mean, I think
did you want to be a rock star?
On some level of my personality that is so repressed that I don't even think about it. Yes, absolutely. That would rule. Yeah.
Hey, so which one would you be? Like you have to choose one and you have to be that person. Because I'm assuming you like are at a point, and maybe this isn't true, at a point in your life where you feel like, oh, I'm comfortable being myself because I typically get to do things that are really exciting, like write books and lecture at public universities or university.
Yeah.
But if you have to
I'm content with my life, but if I were going to be a rock star, it would be David Byrne of Talking Heads. I feel like he's the secret inspiration for all neuroatypical, spastic, arrhythmic, dorky white guys. I feel like he's taken awkwardness and made it beautiful, in a way that like I can only aspire to do.
I love that awkwardness as beautiful. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I know that there were other topics that I wanted to touch on, but everybody should check out your Substack. How often do you post on Substack? Is it new for you?
2-3 times a week. Yeah, it's kind of new, but I used to have a free newsletter, so I'm used to the rhythm of it. Yeah.
Oh, I find that I do Substack too. Well, this is for the Substack people. So that's kind of a duh statement, but it really helps hold me accountable.
Yeah, me too.
And I really enjoy that. I think for me, I know that a lot of people's practice, there's such a wide spectrum of what one's practice could look like, but if I don't show up, nothing happens. And if I don't have, going back to what you were talking about with deadlines, if there's not a deadline, that also doesn't happen. And so I think having that structure or scaffolding is really important. Anyway, everybody should check out your Substack, How to Be Normal by Belt Publishing, or put out by Belt Publishing. When is it out now?
No, it comes out early February, like first week of February.
So that's like soon. You should buy this for your lover or for yourself.
For Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
This is a Valentine's Day present. Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you plan that in the marketing for
No.
this?
No.
I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you so much, Phil, for taking the time to hang out with me. It was a pleasure meeting you, and best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you. You too.